A few days back, we did an AMA video where you were able to ask me anything. We had a great response. We got like tons of questions, but today you get my answers, and that's coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams. So if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So as I mentioned off the top, today I'm going to give you all my answers to all the questions you asked on the AMA, that Ask Me Anything video that went up here a little while back. We had a great response, lots of questions, so let's jump right in here. So I have the comment section open here on a tablet here right in front of me, so I'm going to read through the questions here and give you my answers. It's kind of off the cuff here. Obviously I did kind of read through them quickly before as you asked them online, but I haven't really thought much about them. First question here comes from Jason Ellis. He says, who do you think is going to be the starting goalie in Carolina, and which goalie do you think is going to make the better comeback this year? Well, to be honest, right now I don't have a lot of confidence in either one, but to be honest, I think if I had to pick one of the two, I'd say probably Scott Darling. I think Darling's going to be given more of an opportunity just because of his contract. So hopefully he bounces back and has a better year for Carolina, but they could possibly be in trouble if neither goalie bounces back because they both are coming off terrible seasons. Next up, we have my buddy at Vegas Golden Knights coverage. Louis asked a question here, who would you fight, Ryan Reeves or Dustin Byfuglien, and why? That's a very interesting question. To be honest, I think if I had to pick between Reeves and Byfuglien, I really obviously wouldn't want to do either one because they're both big guys, really strong. I'd probably pick Byfuglien just because Reeves is a little bit more leaner, a little quicker. I think with Dustin Byfuglien, I'd probably stand a better chance to try to get a couple licks in and then run away. But because I think Dustin Byfuglien's a little, since he's even bigger than Reeves, is probably a little slower of the two. So that's what I'd take. But really, either one is not really a great option. Next question comes from Stephen Lafleur here, and it says, what is your dream car and who is your favorite minor league team? P.S. I love your channel. Well, Stephen, thanks very much for your support. I certainly appreciate that. As far as the minor league team goes, well, my primary NHL team that I cheer for is Ottawa. So obviously my primary minor league team would be their AHL affiliate in Belleville. But to be honest, if you go down even to lower ranks here, locally, I live in New Brunswick in province in Canada here. And obviously I watch a lot of other hockey outside of the NHL. Like I watch a lot of junior hockey. We also have a lot of university hockey in this town where I live. So for example, I watch the University of New Brunswick, the Varsity Reds. They're one of the top university teams in Canada, so I certainly watch them a fair bit and cheer for them. I also really like the St. John Sea Dogs in the QMJHL. They're one of the closer teams to me that I have an opportunity to go see often enough for the junior players. So really all those teams are really all my favorites. As far as a dream car goes, to be honest, I'm not really sure I have one. You know, someday if I could see myself riding off like in a Mercedes convertible or something, you know, certainly a possibility. But to be honest, I'm really not that much of a car guy. You know, I've got a wife and kids and family, so you know, we have just your average car. It's not really something that something I dream about having a fancy car. It's not something that's really important to me. Next question here comes from Tying Earl, who's a big Leafs fan. Says, why do you always leave out Roman Polak from your top candidates or players list? Which is an inside joke there in case you haven't seen our comments. Obviously, we joke about Polak quite a bit. But in all seriousness, he says, why did you start your own YouTube channel? Well, that's a great question, and really, to be honest, I found myself as I've been a lifelong hockey fan, watching a lot of hockey content on YouTube, and I just found a lot of the content I was looking for, I just wasn't able to find it. I mean, there were some hockey channels that I thought were doing a decent job and all that, but it just wasn't quite what I was looking for. So I was like, you know what, maybe I could create that. At the same time, got me thinking, at the same time, why don't I could create like a community with like-minded people where I could talk hockey all the time, kind of a creative outlet for myself. Something I thought about doing probably for a good 6 to 12 months before I actually got started. And so far, I'm quite pleased. I've made a lot of good friends through YouTube. So far, a lot of other great YouTubers. I've got to talk with a lot of great viewers and subscribers like yourselves. And overall, it's been a great experience, and I'm certainly glad that I went forward with it. Next question comes from SkankHunts42, who says, I really love your idea and dedication for your videos. My question is, did you play hockey when you were younger? If so, what caliber did you play? Thanks for the passion in hockey, and I've been following your channel since around 100 subscribers. Well, again, thank you very much for your support. I certainly appreciate it. Been around so long, that's great. I did play hockey when I was younger, but I never played on a competitive level. I was the type of player, I played a lot of road hockey, a lot of pond hockey. I learned to skate when I was quite young, but I was never fortunate enough to be able to be put in competitive hockey at a younger age. When I did play, I was quite often, I guess, and maybe this is just my own fantasy world here, but I was kind of like your playmaking type center iceman. Whenever I did play, like whether it be floor hockey, road hockey, pond hockey, seemed like I always got stuck playing center. I like to think I was a pretty good playmaker. Maybe some of my friends could vouch for that, I don't know, but that's what I did play, but unfortunately I never played on a competitive basis. Next question comes from Cole Wheeler. Do you think St. Louis has a bright future? Well, I certainly hope so. St. Louis is one of my more favorite teams. Their goaltender, Jake Allen, hails from my hometown here, Fredericton, New Brunswick, so I certainly am a big Jake Allen fan, try to support him. So I'd really love to see the Blues, take things up a notch here, and I'd love to be able to go to a parade here in my city with our one and only NHL player hoisting the cup in a parade. That would be absolutely awesome, so I certainly hope the Blues do have a bright future. Next question comes from Matthew O'Brien. He wants to know my opinion on the best winger in the NHL. Well, I'd have to say the guy that just hoisted the cup here not too long ago, Alex Ovechkin, the Great Eight. I don't think you can really debate that with all the goals he scored. Got a Stanley Cup now. I think he's the best winger in the NHL. We have another question here from Matthew O'Brien. He says, who is your least favorite team and your favorite team in the NHL? Well, some of you have already figured it out. I try not to talk about it a whole lot just because I don't want to come across as being biased and try to support all teams. I guess when it comes to the least favorite team, it's kind of hard for me to have one. I'm not really sure that I do. There's really no teams that I really can say I really hate for sure. Obviously teams that are kind of rivals of the Senators are teams you kind of build that up over the years a little bit, but really even then, I mean, with the state of the league right now, I mean, there's some teams like in the Western Conference, like the Coyotes and stuff. I wouldn't say that they're it's not that I don't like them, I just don't get to see them enough. Obviously I'm on the East Coast. So sometimes it's challenging to keep in touch with some of the Western Conference teams. So I guess maybe I would say Arizona, but to be honest, I don't really think I really have one. One last question here from Matthew O'Brien. It says, I'm from Connecticut and I really want the Hartford Whalers to come back. Do you think it will ever happen? I've never got to see a game by the Whalers and I'm sad they left to go to Carolina. Well, to be completely honest, I'm sad too. I like the Hartford Whalers, but I really don't see that franchise ever returning. It's not going to be in the cards. There's plenty of other cities with bigger markets that are more likely going to get a franchise before that ever happens. So unfortunately, I do feel bad, for Hartford fans, but it's likely never going to happen. Next question here comes from Snipe City. He says, do you think Pacioretty will be traded soon? Do you think his empowerment regarding an extension will discourage Montreal from getting a viable return? Well, you know what? I do think he will be traded soon. I don't think they're going to get as good a return as they're hoping for just because he's a winger. I mean, typically you do see bigger returns on like a player who plays like a defenseman, top defenseman, or a center iceman. His demands on an extension very well could impact a return as well. It's really hard to say. At this point in time, there's a lot of trades that are rumored to have been happening here or in the works for many weeks and months and hasn't happened. So it's really tough to say, but I do hope for everybody's sake that some of these deals, including Pacioretty, get wrapped up soon so we can all move on. Next question comes from I Don't Give Kachuk. He has a YouTube channel here as well if you might want to check him out if you haven't done so already. He's a newer YouTuber but doing some good content. He says, who is your favorite NHL player of all time and who's your favorite Senators player of all time? Because I know you're a Sens fan. Well, obviously he was smart enough to figure that out, so good on you for that. My favorite Senator of all time, probably a tie between Daniel Alfredsson and Erik Carlsson. Obviously, if Carlsson leaves Ottawa, I will be sad, to be completely honest with you. It's a video I'm not looking forward to having to make is when he gets traded, assuming he does. But obviously, Alfredsson was the player who got me into this team in the first place, so he's right up there as well. Much respect for Alfie over the years. As far as my favorite player of all time, when I was a kid, Wayne Gretzky is the player who really got me interested in hockey. So obviously, being the top player, of all time, really, I think it's safe to say with all the records he holds, it's somebody I looked up to a lot as a child. Next question comes from Lord Darken. What do you think the team name will be for Seattle? Well, personally, I guess if I had my way, I'd probably go with Metropolitans. That's the name that I personally really like. I'm kind of coming around to Seattle Kraken a little bit, just kind of like the name of it. I've heard the name Totems, obviously, was the name we discussed here before. If I had to pick, though, I'd go with Metropolitans. It has some history there, and I like the sounds of it myself, but I guess time will tell. Next question comes from Gravite. Obviously, he's got a YouTube channel. You've seen him appear here before. Dallas Stars fan, does some Dallas Stars reaction videos, but does cover other aspects of the NHL as well. His question is, what is your favorite video game? Well, to be honest, I'm not that much of a gamer. The only game I own is the NHL game. I currently have NHL 17. I'm even a year behind on on the latest game. Obviously, NHL 19 will be out here soon. I don't really have a lot of time for gaming, but when I do, I'm a hockey fan, and that's really the only game I enjoy playing. I've tried playing some other games, it's like some of the role-playing games and stuff, and I can't get into it. I did play more when I was a kid, but as of right now, the NHL games is all I play. Next question comes from BulldogsMan. He says, why are the Senators your favorite team? To be honest, when I was younger, at one point in time in my life, I found myself without a team. Like, I was a Gretzky fan, but I wasn't really an Oilers fan per se. When he got traded to the LA Kings, I was a Kings fan as a kid for a long time. But then after Gretzky moved on from LA and then he retired, I kind of felt myself in limbo. I found it hard to keep up with the Kings, where I was on the East Coast, they were on the West Coast. So I was like, you know what, I really would want to find another team that I could really follow and really, become a real hardcore fan of. Everybody around me seemed like they were Montreal, Toronto, Boston. I just was looking for something different. And then in the early 2000s, we've seen the Senators start to emerge as a more powerful team. Alfredsson, certainly picked up the pace. So I really jumped on board with the Senators back then. So Daniel Alfredsson and his play and the fact that they were really becoming a stronger team in the early part of the 2000s is really what's got me on board to be a Sens fan. Next question comes from Flyers fan 1122. When do you think the Flyers will win the Cup, and who will win the Conn Smythe Trophy? Well, to be honest, I think the Flyers are a few pieces away. They certainly have a lot of good building blocks. I guess if they were to win the Cup sometime in the next 5 years, I would certainly say I'd pick Sean Couturier. Based on how he played last year, I have a lot of respect for Couturier. Obviously, another reason I'm a big Couturier fan as well is that he's originally from Bathurst, New Brunswick. Obviously, New Brunswick is where I live, so we don't have a lot of NHL players from our province here in the NHL, so obviously it's nice to see them succeed. So I'd love to see him win if they were to pull it off, but I would see I can see them being at least a few more years away before they have a real strong shot at the Cup. They need to shore up their goaltending here. Hopefully Carter Hart will solve that for them here in a few years' time. Next question comes from Justin Miner. He says, over or under Senators 60 points for the upcoming season? I'm going with over. I think they're going to surprise a few people here. Next question comes from Lee Thomas. He says, do you think the NHL will go to Olympic-sized rinks and get rid of the trapezoid behind the net? Doing well, my friend. Keep it up. Well, thanks again, Lee, for your support. I know you've been around a long time as well. I don't think the NHL is going to go to Olympic-sized rinks, and I don't see the trapezoid going away either. Personally, I think things are just great the way they are, and I think that they're not going to change anything in that sense. Question comes from Dark Magician. Are you afraid of what can happen to the Sens? You never know, they could end up moving or something. Well, to be honest, as we know, the things aren't great in Ottawa, but I don't have any concerns over them moving. I really honestly don't. I think if anything came down to it, that the team could be sold. There's plenty of buyers lined up. Just a matter of getting Melnyk out of the picture, so I don't have any concerns over them moving. Next question comes from Vaughn Hook. I have two questions. Will the Golden Knights miss the playoffs next year, and will Joe Pavelski re-sign with the Sharks? I think the answer is going to be no. I think the Golden Knights will make the playoffs. I could see them possibly regressing a little bit. Obviously, they came off a fantastic year. The team's going to be a little different next year, so be interesting to see how they do, but I can still see them being a playoff team, and I do see Joe Pavelski staying with the Sharks to finish out his career. Next question comes from Walter M. Do you think Vegas will make the playoffs next year, and who do you think will win the Stanley Cup? Yes, as I just mentioned, Vegas will make the playoffs. Who do I think will win the Stanley Cup? There's a few teams. I mean, obviously, right now, if I had to pick, I'd probably go with Tampa. That's just who I honestly think Tampa's due here. They were one of the favorites last year. They didn't get the job done. I guess that's an early pick, but it's really hard to make predictions, and I'm probably going to be wrong on that. But if I had to guess right now, that would be my choice. Next question comes from The Rough. He says, least favorite NHL team. Well, I've already answered that. Number 2, thoughts on Eugene Melnyk. I don't like the man. I think he needs to go, and I can't wait for the Senators to get a new owner. I'll leave it at that. Not a fan at all. Do you think Carlsson or Duchesne or even Stone could leave in free agency? It is a possibility if they don't get ownership in line here so that things can get better at that level. They're going to be highly at risk to lose some players for sure. He goes on to ask a couple questions here, more personal. He says, what is your favorite food? To be honest, my favorite food, I love to barbecue in the summertime, especially here. If I could make a nice barbecue steak, then that's always going to be my favorite food for sure. So if you ever want to win me over, a nice barbecue steak dinner will certainly go over quite well. Do you follow any other sports such as NFL, MLB, NBA, etc., etc.? I do follow the NBA a little bit. I like the Toronto Raptors because they're the only team we have here in Canada. But to be honest, outside of hockey, I do kind of keep up with other sports, but I wouldn't say I really follow them very closely. Over the years, have had times where I've gotten into other sports, but at this point in time, I really don't have the time, or lost the interest, I should say. They kind of keep up with a lot of it. Next question comes from Jason Lee. Have you ever thought about doing some live streams? Yes, Jason, I have. I'm in the process of trying to get that going. I just need to make a few more technical changes, I guess, with the setup and some equipment here. Trying to get a different microphone to work more with my computer. Obviously, right now, the microphone I use goes, it's a lavalier microphone, so I'm trying to get a different one that's better for live streaming to go with my computer, which actually will be here next week. So I am hoping here sometime before the end of the summer I will get at least one live stream in. And then once the season gets underway here for 18-19, I do plan on doing some live streams. I want to get into it. It's just a matter of going through the process here to get everything set up. Next question comes from Renegade Man 83. A lot of these questions have already been answered. It says, why did you become a YouTuber? I've answered that. Did you play hockey when you were younger? I answered that. And what are your hobbies and do you do in your pastime? Can the Habs bounce back with a healthy Weber and Carey Price next season? What Canadian team do you see winning the Stanley Cup? Well, as we know, Shea Weber is not healthy, will be out half the year. I think the Habs are going to have a hard time. If Carey Price is healthy and playing up to his normal standard, then they could have some success, but they are going to have a tough go of it for sure. Which Canadian team do you see winning the Stanley Cup? I think the first one will be the Winnipeg Jets, and I think the Maple Leafs are not far behind. So I think Toronto and Winnipeg are the two Canadian powerhouses right now. What other hobbies do you have in your pastime? As far as favorite hobbies goes right now, outside of working my full-time job, doing videos, everything, I don't have a ton of time, but I just love spending time with my daughter. We do a lot of sporting activities together. We do a lot of skating. We do some hockey, basketball, baseball. We do a little bit of everything outdoors, especially during the nice weather. So really spending time with her is by far my favorite hobby. Next question comes from Detroit sports fan. When will Detroit Red Wings be able to compete again? Will Zadina and Mantha be 30 goal scorers next year? Do you see Dylan Larkin hitting 70 points? To be honest, Dylan Larkin could hit 70 points this year. It is possible. Zadina and Mantha, I think Mantha more likely to be the 30-goal scorer first. Zadina does have a ton of potential as well. There's certainly quite a possibility. I do think Detroit is still another 2 or 3 years away, though, from being real competitive and having another good shot of being a playoff team. Next question from Detroit sports fans, which I've kind of answered here, says, do you have a wife and kids, and what was your favorite player growing up? Well, yes, I am married. I do have one child, and my favorite player growing up was Wayne Gretzky, which we already discussed. Next question from Robert Stacy. Do you think the Leafs are one stud defenseman away from the promised land? To be honest, they very well could be. They're getting stronger all the time. Obviously, adding Tavares was huge. If they could add themselves another top defenseman, I think that would put them over the top. But I think they're pretty close as it is, even without that. Next question from Francois Parody. What was your oldest childhood hockey memory, the moment you fell in love with hockey? He says he fell in love with hockey back in '81, even though his Habs got crushed by the Oilers. To be honest, one of my earliest memories wasn't even an NHL memory. It was an international tournament. It was the old Canada Cup 1987. The winning goal, Gretzky going down the wing over to Mario Lemieux in the net, Canada over Russia. That was one of my oldest memories that I remember. I mean, at the time I would have been about 8 years old. At that point, I was already a hockey fan for sure. But I think that moment just really, really captured me and really, I was a hardcore fan from that point forward. So for me, that's one of my earliest memories that really jumps out. Next question comes from Joey Giroux. Since you're a Sens fan, why do you think they have trouble with their attendance? Well, to be honest, I think it's the location of the arena. I mean, I've been there a handful of times, even though I live quite a distance away in New Brunswick. I do try to get up to Ottawa at least once a year for a couple of games. And to be honest, for me, coming in from where I live, traveling from New Brunswick to Ontario is great because it's right off the highway. But I can see if you live in the downtown area on the other side, and depending on what part of Ottawa you live in, how it can be, not the greatest commute and whatnot. So I think they need to be more downtown. I think that will solve a lot of their attendance issues. But to be honest, I think they have a nice arena out in Canada. It's a great area. You can't help but wonder if they move downtown, or what are all the fans in Canada going to do? Now, they're going to have a harder time getting to the arena. So I don't know. I mean, if I lived there, I might be able to better answer that. But in my opinion, all the locals tell me it's just more about location. Next question from Kyle Bachman says, are you from Canada? Because a few of your videos you talk about going to some OHL and WHL games. Yes, I am from Canada, and no, I have not gone to OHL and WHL games. I have seen some of their players in different tournaments, but where I live in New Brunswick, we do have some teams that play in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, like the Moncton Wildcats, the St. John Sea Dogs, the Acadie Bathurst Titans. So I watch a lot of games from the QMJHL, but I have seen other tournaments with all those other players, but it's mainly the QMJHL teams that I see when I'm talking about junior. Next question comes from Crafty Maniac. Do you follow any other sports? I think I've already kind of answered that. I don't really know. I mean, I do watch like the Blue Jays, for Toronto Blue Jays for baseball a little bit. The Raptors are the NBA team that Canada has. So I do try to keep up with them a little bit. It's not that I'm not interested. I really, to be honest, hockey is by far my main passion. Next question comes from Mackie, and he's left a whole bunch of questions here, and he said that just to answer whatever I have time for. So here it goes. He said, what's your first name? Well, my name is Mike, in case you don't know. I know I don't really say that a lot. I guess maybe I just feel weird talking about myself. I don't know. But for any of you who don't know, my first name is Mike. What is your nationality background? I'm born and raised in Canada. I've lived the majority of my life in New Brunswick. I was born in Ontario. Spent a little bit of time in Halifax, Nova Scotia, but the bulk of my time in New Brunswick. Let's see, he's lots of other questions. I'll try to pick out a couple other questions here because he's left quite a few. How old are you? I'm a whopping 39 years old. I know I look very young for my age. Thank you very much. How many siblings do you have? I have none. I'm an only child. He says, what do you do for money? I run my own business. My main job is I work as a mortgage broker. I've run my own business for about 10 years, which is thankfully where I am self-employed. It gives me the flexibility to make my own schedule, which kind of creates the time I need to be able to do this as a hobby as well. Do you drink occasionally? If so, what do you drink? Well, I primarily like to have a beer to unwind, but I do like some wines as well. Do you have any tattoos? No, I do not. I am completely tattoo-less. Do I have any pets? No, my daughter has a pet fish. That's about as close as it gets. Next question comes from Anthony Chalowski. Doing these videos is time consuming. Does your wife ever get upset with you for the amount of time it takes not only doing the videos but doing the research, etc.? My wife's been very supportive of this. You know, she's really helped me a lot along the way here. She's I'm very lucky that way at all. We haven't had any issues with me the amount of time it does take me to do these videos. She's quite happy to see me doing something I'm passionate about and seeing the channel grow. She's been very proud of what I've been able to accomplish here so far. But at the same time, I do have to make sure that we do take a time out and make sure I have enough family time because that's very precious and important. Question comes from Dazzle Sniper 290. Love your channel. Do you play Fortnite? No, I do not. I've never got into that. Next question. After the Sens, do you have any other favorite teams? My next two favorite teams are the St. Louis Blues and the Winnipeg Jets. As I mentioned, Jake Allen is the reason I'm a Blues fan because he's a local boy to us here, our only local NHL player, so I have to support that. And really, the Winnipeg Jets really caught my attention this year in the playoffs. You know, obviously they're another Canadian team as well. They're in the Western Conference, so I kind of consider the Jets to be my Western Conference favorite team. Question comes from Zach. He says, why is Patrick Kane the best player in the history of the NHL? Well, obviously you're a Hawks fan. You're entitled to your opinion. I love Patrick Kane. He's a great player, but clearly he's not the best of all time. Sorry, no offense. Next question comes from Jeff K. Is it possible for Detroit to land Panarin? No, I'm sorry, I don't think it is. Next question comes from Cytility7. Which other YouTubers do you watch? Well, a lot of guys and people you've seen on this channel are the ones I watch. Obviously, if I wouldn't have invited them to come do collaborations with me, if I wasn't familiar with their channels, but I've gotten to know quite a few of them. So, you know, anybody you've seen on this channel before, you know, Vegas Golden Knights coverage, you get O. Nyquist, you've got Maroon on defense, Clay Emo, Lego Rocks 99, you've got O. Nyquist, you've got Andrew Polak Hockey, you've got Arcade Regiment, The Sports Girl, you've got Audie James. There's all kinds. There's Gravite, Ryan Mac Hockey. Like you name it, there's probably even more. Andy LaHoo from NHL Draft Central. We just did a video with Andy. Andy's pretty awesome too. There's all kinds of them that are really solid NHL YouTubers, and I really try to take in as much of their content as I can. Next question comes from Darth, New York Rangers, who was the winner of one of our giveaways a while back. He won himself an NHL Adidas hat. He says, I don't have a question, I just want to be in your video. Well, there you go, Darth. Thanks for your support. Next question from Colton Sawatsky. Do you think Jim Benning's doing a good job in Vancouver? They've done a good job drafting some questionable trades, and now that Trevor Linden is out of Vancouver, I do have some concerns, to be completely honest. Next question comes from Stanley's Cup. McDavid or Crosby? I'm still taking Crosby. I love McDavid, don't get me wrong, but Crosby's accomplishments are just too much to pass up. When McDavid gets there someday, maybe we'll change the argument. Next question from Randy Doucette. Better fantasy option, points only. Thomas or Kyrou? To be honest, I'd probably go Kyrou. I think he's the more offensive of the two. Next question from Jonathan Cristeo. Do you think Seattle will be a hockey market and fan base, and who do you have connections or met NHL players? Yes, Seattle will be a great market. They will get a team. It will be announced here sometime this year. The main NHL player I've met is Jake Allen, as I mentioned a couple times now in this video. This question comes from Joel Krumrein. What division do you think is the toughest? To be honest, right now, I'm going to say the Atlantic. I realize that the bottom end of it is kind of weak, but when you get the three powerhouses at the top, like Toronto, Tampa, and Boston, that is going to be extremely tough, and I think that's the toughest division right now. Next question comes from Frederick Samard. Favorite player in the NHL? Right now, my favorite player is Erik Carlsson, hands down. Next question comes from Robert Tanner. If you could share a meal with one player from each team, who would it be and why? That question would take me forever to answer, so I will just pick one. To be honest, I'd love to sit down and share some Swedish meatballs with Erik Carlsson. I think that would be absolutely hilarious. I'd love to pick his brain over a meal and see what's really going on inside his head and find out what his real thoughts are on Senators ownership, As far as the other ones go, I'm really not sure, to be completely honest. I could be here all day answering that question, but I do appreciate the time that you took to ask the question. Next question from Daniel. Do you think the Devils are going to be better than last year? To be honest, I think the Devils are going to be about the same. They haven't really done a lot so far. They have a very small lineup. I do see them maybe making some small steps, but nothing too much. Next question from calicocat. What would your dream come true example be of meeting a famous person? Well, to be honest, I think if I had to pick outside of hockey players, I'm really not really into celebrities. I'd say maybe meeting a player like Wayne Gretzky or Mario Lemieux. Like probably Gretzky, who was my absolute favorites of all time. If I could meet him, that would probably be it. Next question here from Ray Silvio. Which teams do you see as the best center depth in the league? And which non-playoff teams do you see making the postseason next year? As far as best center depth, I think you could probably argue between Toronto and Pittsburgh now. Obviously those with the addition of John Tavares, the Leafs are very strong down the middle. As far as teams that might make the playoffs this year that didn't last, the one team that comes to mind who was a really hot second half team that I would probably say could take some teams by surprise this year would be the Arizona Coyotes. There's probably going to be some others as well, but right now if I had to pick one, just kind of off the cuff here based on their second half play, I'd go with Arizona. Next question comes from Rugged English. Who was your all-star team? 5 skaters plus a goalie. Well, in the net, I'd have to go with Connor Hellebuyck from Winnipeg. On the back end, I'd go with Carlsson and Doughty. Up front, I got to go with Crosby as my center iceman. I know McDavid's the dynamic and everything, but I'm still going to stick with Crosby there. And I think on the wings, we're going to put the dynamic duo from Tampa, Kucherov and Stamkos. I know Stamkos often plays center, but I think they would work well on the wings with Crosby, and I think that would be a lethal team to go with. Next question comes from Lucky Besser. Who was the most underrated prospect and most overrated prospect in the league? Now, this is a really great question, very interesting to think about. Underrated prospect is somebody that I'm very high on that I think is going to be a major goal scorer in the league that you don't hear a lot of talk about is Kiefer Bellows from the New York Islanders. He's done really well. He had a strong year 2 years ago at BU. Tore it up with Portland and WHL this past year. I'm not sure if he'll crack the Islanders lineup this year. I think he has a good chance, but I think he's going to be a big goal scorer in the league when he does make it. So for a player you don't hear much about, I got really high hopes. As far as overrated prospect goes, I know looking back to guys, we had a lot of guys kind of make their debuts towards the end of last year. I'd probably have to go with Eeli Tolvanen from the Predators. He kind of looked a little lost out there in the games he played. He came in with a lot of hype and didn't really deliver. So right now, that's who I'd go with for that. So thanks very much for asking your questions. I really appreciate it. I hope this was worthwhile for helping you get to know me a little bit better. We'll certainly do this again here in the future. If I didn't get to your question here in this video, I will answer it in the comment section online. So certainly check back there. There's just so many questions. It's hard to get to all of them. And some people left comments with about 10, 15, 20 questions. And as you can probably understand, I just don't have time to do them all without making this video incredibly long. Again, thank you very much for your support. Thank you for your questions. I hope you found this fun. I know I had a lot of fun answering your questions, and we'll certainly do this again soon.